The mist came from nowhere. One moment, you are walking a familiar road. The next, you're surrounded by fog so thick you can taste it. Cold, wet, wrong. It clings to your skin like cobwebs, wraps around your throat like grasping fingers. You try to call out, but your voice dies in the oppressive silence. Even your footsteps seem muffled, swallowed by the gray. You take a step forward, then another. The ground beneath your feet feels different now, softer, as if the earth itself has changed. When the mist finally begins to thin, you find yourself standing on a road you've never seen before. The sky above is the color of old bruises, heavy clouds pressing down like a coffin lid. In the distance, you can make out shapes, dark forests that seem to lean inward, watching. And beyond them, perched on a mountain like a crown of thorns, a castle. Its spires claw at the gray sky, black stone drinking in what little light remains. Your heart hammers in your chest. This isn't where you were. This isn't anywhere you know. Welcome, traveler, to the Demiplane of Dread, to the gothic nightmare known as Ravenloft. You just crossed a threshold that most never even knew existed, pulled from your world into a realm of perpetual twilight and ancient evil. The mists that brought you here, they have names in the old tongues. The shrouds of sorrow, the prison fog, the grasp of the dark powers. But we can discuss what they are later. Right now, you need to understand what you're facing. Because the land you're standing in, dear traveler, is not merely dangerous, it is alive. It is conscious. And it is very, very hungry. Ravenloft is a prison, but not the kind you're thinking of. There are no bars here, no chains you can see or break. The walls of this prison are made of desire and regret, of obsession and unfinished business. And the prisoners, they are lords and ladies, rulers of cursed domains, beings who committed such profound evil that they drew the attention of forces older and more terrible than any god you might worship. These domains, dozens of them stitched together by the mists, are pocket realities, each one a perfect trap engineered with surgical precision to torment its master. And you? Through accident or fate or the cruel whim of entities that do not explain themselves, you are now standing in one of these cursed lands. So settle in, traveler. We have much to discuss if you hope to survive. We must speak of the dark powers that rule this place from their unknowable distance. We must walk the fog-shrouded streets of Barovia and stand before Castle Ravenloft. We must understand the terrible intelligence that architects these perfect hells. Because knowledge in Ravenloft is the only shield you have. And even that shield has cracks. This is the lore of Ravenloft. And you're going to need every word of it. Now, you might be asking yourself, who created this place? Who has the power to build prisons for the damned? The answer, traveler, is both simple and terrifying. They are called the dark powers. Picture trying to describe a color you've never seen, a sound beyond hearing. That's what the dark powers are. Not gods, though there might rivals any deity you might pray to. Not demon lords or devil princes, though their understanding of cruelty makes 9 hells look like a paradise of simple tortures. They are something that exists outside the categories your mind is equipped to handle. Something other. No one has ever seen them. No temples honor them. No priests pray in their name. They make no deals, issue no proclamations, answer no prayers. If you tried to summon one, if you drew circles and burned incense and chanted their names, you would receive only silence. Cold, watching silence. What the dark powers do is observe. They watch the multiverse, countless worlds spinning through countless planes, and they look for specific individuals. Not the casually cruel, not the merely wicked. No, the dark powers are patient. They wait for something special. Someone who commits an act of evil so profound, so willfully cruel, that it resonates across the planes like a bell tolling in the dark. And when they find such a person, when that perfect note of villainy rings out, they do something that defies all logic of punishment. They don't destroy the evildoer. They don't cast them into the abyss or chain them in the 9 hells. Instead, they reward them. They gift them with power. They elevate them to rulers of their own domains, making them lords of pocket dimensions within the Demiplane of Dread.
These rulers are called Dark Lords. Dark Lords. And if you're standing in Ravenloft right now, you're standing in one of their kingdoms. But here's what you need to understand, and this is crucial for your survival. This is not a reward. This is the most exquisite torture ever devised. Imagine being given everything you ever wanted, and then discovering you can never truly have it. Imagine ruling a kingdom where every subject, every stone, every shadow is designed specifically to remind you of your greatest failure. That's what a domain of dread is. Each one is custom-built, architected stone by cursed stone to reflect its lord's deepest sin and deny them their deepest desire. The dark powers are cosmic storytellers, you see. Each Dark Lord is the protagonist of a tragedy that never ends, a play that runs forever, always approaching the moment of catharsis but never, ever reaching it. The curtain never falls. The final act never comes. It just loops, eternally, with small variations to keep it fresh. And the borders of these kingdoms? They're sealed by the mists you walked through. Those same gray walls that brought you here now trap the Dark Lords in their domains. Whenever a Dark Lord tries to leave, the mists rise like living walls, cold and impenetrable, forcing them back. You've felt those mists now. You know how they taste, how they wrap around your lungs. Imagine knowing that you'll feel that every time you try to escape for eternity. But the true genius, the real cruelty of the trap, isn't in the mists themselves. It's in the domain. Because the Dark Lord cannot leave, not because they physically can't, though the mists help with that, but because to leave would mean abandoning the very thing they desire most. Their domain contains the object of their obsession, the key to their redemption, or so they believe. A lost love who keeps being reborn. A magical secret that stays just out of reach. Power that crumbles in their grasp. Whatever it is, it's here, in this cursed land. And so they stay. They rule. They suffer. Forever reaching for something just beyond their fingertips. Now you might be wondering, can they be redeemed? Is there a way out for these Dark Lords? The Dark Powers never explain. They leave no instruction manual, no list of conditions to meet. Some scholars believe redemption is impossible, that the Dark Powers chose these individuals precisely because they're incapable of genuine change. Others whisper that escape is possible, but only through a transformation so complete that the Dark Lord would cease to be themselves entirely. Death of the self in exchange for freedom of the soul. What we know for certain is this. The Dark Powers are patient. They have all of eternity. And they seem particularly interested when new souls enter their domains, when travelers like you stumble through the mists. Some believe the Dark Powers arrange these intrusions deliberately, adding new variables to their eternal plays. After all, what's a story without an audience? What's a tragedy without witnesses. So what are they, really? There are theories, whispered in libraries and arcane academies across the plains. Some believe they are remnants of a dead pantheon, gods who have moved beyond concepts of good and evil into something colder and more alien. Others think they might be the multiverse itself achieving consciousness, a kind of cosmic immune system that isolates the most virulent evils. Some whisper that the Dark Powers are future iterations of the Dark Lords themselves, trapped in some impossible causal loop. The truth? Unknown. The Dark Powers maintain their silence. They build their prisons, they watch their captives suffer, and the Demiplane of Dread grows ever larger. As new domains appear in the mists, new Dark Lords take their thrones, and the catalogue of exquisite suffering expands. Behind every castle and curse, every monster and tragedy in Ravenloft, there is an intelligence. Something is orchestrating all of this. Something with infinite patience and an intimate understanding of what makes souls break. And nowhere is this more evident in the first domain, the original prison, the template for all others. The land of Barovia, ruled by Count Strahd von Zarovich. If you're unlucky enough to be standing in Barovia right now, and I suspect many of you are, given how the mists seem to favor this particular domain, then you need to understand the vampire lord who rules this cursed valley. Because Strahd is the first Dark Lord, the original prisoner, and in many ways he defines what it means to be trapped in Ravenloft. His story doesn't begin in darkness. It begins in glory. Centuries ago, in a world beyond the mists, Strahd von Zarovich was a conqueror, not a monster. Not yet. He was the second son of King Barov, and from the moment he could hold a sword, he was forged for war. His older brother, Sergei, was everything Strahd was not. Gentle, kind, born to rule in peacetime, to sit on thrones and accept the love of his people. Strahd? Strahd was born to fight. And he fought. For decades, he led armies for his father. He conquered lands, pushed back enemies, claimed territory after territory. His name became a watchword for victory. His tactical mind was unmatched. His will was iron-forged in blood. Soldiers would follow him into the jaws of death itself because they knew, somehow they always knew, that Strahd would find a way to win. But victory has a price. And for Strahd, it was paid in time. He watched himself age. Gray crept into his dark hair like frost. Lines appeared on his face, carved there by wind and battle, and endless nights planning the next campaign. His body, though still strong, began to show the wear of a lifetime spent in armor. And all the while, back home in the palace, his brother Sergei remained untouched by war. Youthful, beloved, the heir who would inherit everything, while Strahd, the weapon, the general, the man who had won his father's empire, would be remembered as a footnote, a sword to be wielded and then retired.
The jealousy grew slowly, like poison in a wound. Every victory felt hollow, every conquest meaningless, because what did it matter, in the end, if Sergei would wear the crown? After one final, brutal campaign, Strahd claimed a valley for his family, a dark place surrounded by mountains where mist pooled in the lowlands and the forests grew thick and tangled. He built a castle there, pouring his wealth and his fury into its construction, a monument to his achievements, a place where he could finally rest
and be recognized for what he had sacrificed for his family. He named it Castle Ravenloft. He invited his family to celebrate his conquest. His father came, old and frail now, near the end, and Sergei came, bringing with him a young woman named Tatiana, his betrothed, the woman he intended to marry. The moment Strahd saw her, something inside him broke. Was it her youth, her beauty, the way she represented everything he felt he had lost? Or was it simply that she was one more thing his brother possessed that he did not? We may never know, but Strahd became obsessed. He convinced himself it was love, that he deserved her after all he had sacrificed for his family, that she should be his. But Tatiana saw only shadows when she looked at Strahd. When she looked at Sergei, she saw kindness and light. She loved the younger brother. And when Strahd approached her, when he declared his feelings, she recoiled, she refused him. That rejection fed his obsession like oil on flame. On the eve of Sergei and Tatiana's wedding, Strahd made his choice. He had spent his life taking what he wanted through force and strategy. Why should this be different? If he could not win Tatiana through love, he would take her through power. And if that required sacrificing everything he had been, everything he had believed, so be it. He found a ritual in forbidden texts, dark magic that promised immortality, eternal youth, and power beyond mortal comprehension. The price? The blood of someone he loved. On the night before the wedding, in Castle Ravenloft's chapel, Strahd murdered his brother Sergei. He drove a blade into his heart, spilling his blood on sacred stone, and completed the ritual. As Sergei's life bled away, as his brother's eyes dimmed and went dark, Strahd felt power surge through him like lightning. His youth returned, his vitality blazed. He had become something more than human, something immortal and terrible. He had become a vampire. But the instant his transformation completed, the instant Sergei's last breath rattled in his throat, Tatiana fled. She ran through the castle, Strahd pursuing her, calling out that he had done this for her, that they could be together forever now, that she should understand. She ran until there was nowhere left to run, until she stood on the highest parapet of Castle Ravenloft, with the walls at her back and the vampire Count before her. And when she saw what he had become, when she truly understood the monster Strahd von Zarovich had made of himself, she chose to fall rather than be caught. She threw herself from the castle walls. Strahd found her body at the base of the tower. He held her as her blood stained his hands, as the reality of what he had done crashed over him like a wave of ice. And in that moment, as he knelt there with Tatiana dead in his arms and his brother's blood still wet on his blade, the mists came. They rolled in from nowhere, thick and cold and absolute. They sealed the valley. Everyone who had witnessed Strahd's crime, everyone who could speak of his brother's kingdom, the wedding guests, the guards, the servants, all of them were caught. The entire valley was pulled away from the world that birthed it, dragged into a pocket dimension, a new prison constructed by the dark powers. When the mists cleared, Strahd stood in a land that was his and his alone, the valley of Barovia, his domain, his perfect hell, and still clutched in his arms the body of Tatiana, cold and lifeless and forever beyond his reach. This was the birth of Ravenloft, the first domain, the template, and Strahd von Zarovich was the first Dark Lord, the vampire count who would measure every prisoner who came after. If you're in Barovia now, you can feel it. The weight of this history presses down on everything. The land itself remembers Strahd's crime, and it makes sure you remember it too. Barovia is a realm of perpetual gloom. The sun here is a pale ghost, barely visible through clouds the color of old iron. When it does break through, it offers no warmth, just a weak gray light that makes the shadows seem darker by comparison. The forests are ancient and suffocating, their gnarled trees pressing close to roads that seem to shift when you're not looking. The howl of wolves echo through the branches at night, but it's the silences between the howls that truly unsettle you. In those moments of quiet, you can almost feel the forest watching you. The villages are small and poor. Vallaki, with its false festivals and painted smiles hiding desperation. The village of Barovia itself, huddled near the castle shadow, its people broken by generations of fear. Krez, isolated and suspicious, its walls keeping out the world, but trapping terror within. The people here live with their heads down and their voices low. They know the name of their lord. They call him the devil. Some of them worship him in secret, hoping for his favor. Others pray to the morning lord, a sun god whose light barely reaches this cursed land. But all of them fear Strahd. You can see it in their eyes, that peculiar kind of terror that comes from living your entire life in the shadow of a predator. And above it all, perched on a mountain of dark stone like a crown of thorns, Castle Ravenloft looms, its spires cut into the gray sky like black daggers. Even from miles away, you can feel it watching you, because Strahd is always watching. His castle has 1,000 windows, 1,000 eyes, and they see everything that moves in his domain. Strahd rules Barovia absolutely. He is lord, judge, and executioner. He commands the night. Wolves answer his call, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. The dead rise at his command, crawling from their graves to serve him. He can move through shadows, cross miles in moments, and his hypnotic gaze can enslave the will of even the strongest mind. He is centuries old now, his power grown immense through long years of undeath. Yet for all this power, for all his dominion, Strahd is tormented, because the dark powers, in their infinite cruelty, have given him a curse more terrible than his transformation into a vampire. Tatiana is reborn. Again and again throughout the centuries, women bearing her soul appear in Barovia. They're not her, not exactly. They have their own names. Tatiana Fedorovna, Marina Ulrich, Irina Koliana. Their own lives, their own memories, but they carry something of her essence, her spirit. And each time one appears, Strahd knows. He always knows. He pursues them, convinced that this time will be different. This time he can win her love. This time she will see past the monster and understand the man who sacrificed everything for her. He courts them with gifts and poetry, with shows of power and declarations of devotion. He tries to be charming, tries to be the general he once was, the hero of 100 battles. But it is never different. Each incarnation of Tatiana either dies, often tragically, or comes to see Strahd for exactly what he is and flees from him in horror. Some have thrown themselves from the same castle walls the original Tatiana fell from. Others have died by disease, by accident, by the machinations of Strahd's enemies. But none have ever loved him. None have ever chosen him. None ever will. Because Strahd cannot change. He cannot let go of his jealousy, his possessiveness, his fundamental belief that he deserves her. He loved what Tatiana represented, the youth and innocence he had lost, but he never truly saw her as a person with her own will. And so the cycle continues, forever pursuing, forever losing, forever denied the one thing he desires most. This is the architecture of his damnation, you see. The dark powers have given him everything. Immortality, power, dominion over a land where his word is law. And they have denied him the only thing that matters to him. He is king of a cursed realm, wealthy beyond measure, feared by all, and utterly, completely alone. Castle Ravenloft itself reflects this tragedy. It is a marvel of Gothic architecture, yes, with soaring towers and grand halls, but it is also a tomb, a monument to a wedding that never happened. The decorations from that doomed celebration still hang in places, faded and rotting. Sergei's body lies in a crypt beneath the castle, perfectly preserved, a constant reminder. And in the highest tower, Strahd keeps a gallery of portraits. Tatiana's face, painted again and again, every incarnation he has ever known. A collection of his failures, each one more beautiful and more painful than the last. Every stone in that castle remembers. Every hall echoes with Tatiana's flight. It is a place built on a moment of evil, and that moment has been preserved and expanded for eternity. If you ever find yourself walking those corridors, you'll feel it. The weight of obsession and regret pressed into the very walls. And Strahd? He has become something between monster and tragic figure, though he would rage at being called the latter. He still sees himself as wronged, as deserving of love and happiness. He blames fate. He blames the dark powers in moments of bitter clarity. He blames Tatiana's reincarnations for not understanding. But he never blames himself. Not truly. Not enough to change. And so he remains trapped, the lord of a domain that is his perfect prison. This is the architecture of his damnation, you see. The dark powers have given him everything. Immortality, power, dominion over a land where his word is law. And they have denied him the only thing that matters to him. He is king of a cursed realm, wealthy beyond measure, feared by all, and utterly, completely alone. Castle Ravenloft itself reflects this tragedy. It is a marvel of Gothic architecture, yes, with soaring towers and grand halls, but it is also a tomb, a monument to a wedding that never happened. The decorations from that doomed celebration still hang in places, faded and rotting. Sergei's body lies in a crypt beneath the castle, perfectly preserved, a constant reminder. And in the highest tower, Strahd keeps a gallery of portraits. Tatiana's face, painted again and again, every incarnation he has ever known. A collection of his failures, each one more beautiful and more painful than the last. Every stone in that castle remembers. Every hall echoes with Tatiana's fright. It is a place built on a moment of evil, and that moment has been preserved and expanded for eternity. If you ever find yourself walking those corridors, you'll feel it, the weight of obsession and regret pressed into the very walls. And Strahd? He has become something between monster and tragic figure, though he would rage at being called the latter. He still sees himself as wronged, as deserving of love and happiness. He blames fate. He blames the dark powers in moments of bitter clarity. He blames Tatiana's reincarnations for not understanding. But he never blames himself. Not truly. Not enough to change. And so he remains trapped, the lord of a domain that is his perfect prison. This is why Strahd von Zarovich is the archetypal Dark Lord. His domain is not a prison of walls and chains. It is a prison of desire and regret. He could leave his castle. He could stop pursuing Tatiana's reincarnations. He could seek a different existence. But he won't. He can't. His obsession is too great. And so Barovia endures, a land frozen in eternal twilight, ruled by a vampire who has everything, except the one thing that might redeem him. And if you're an adventurer who's found yourself in Barovia, you've already drawn Strahd's attention. He is fascinated by outsiders. He sees in you potential allies, enemies, entertainment, or in some cases simply new victims for his amusement. He is known to invite travelers to Castle Ravenloft for dinner, to play games of cat and mouse, to test their resolve and courage. Some he tries to corrupt, offering power or safety in exchange for service. Others he simply hunts. But understand this, and it's crucial. Strahd is not merely a monster to be defeated. He is the land itself, woven into Barovia's very essence. To anger him is to earn his eternal ending. And in Barovia, there is no hiding from Strahd's reach. The mists ensure that. If you somehow manage to kill him, and some have, temporarily, he simply reforms in his coffin deep beneath the castle, his memories intact, his grudge now personal. Those who anger him find themselves hunted not for days or weeks, but as long as they remain in his domain. And his domain, traveler, is very hard to leave. Now, you might be thinking that Barovia is the entirety of Ravenloft, that if you could just escape this cursed valley, you'd be free. I wish that were true, but the Demiplane of Dread is vast beyond imagining. Barovia is merely the first domain, the original prison. The dark powers have been collecting evil souls for centuries, and each one gets their own perfectly crafted hell. The mists connect dozens of domains, maybe more. Some exist in clusters, their borders touching, allowing limited travel between them. Others are islands of terror, completely isolated, surrounded entirely by the mists, only accessible when the dark powers will it. And each domain, traveler, is unique. Each is a different flavor of horror, a different genre of nightmare. Let me tell you about a few of them, not to frighten you, though they will, but because knowledge might save your life. If the mists decide to move you from one domain to another, and they do that sometimes, seemingly on a whim, you'll want to know what you're walking into. If you find yourself leaving Barovia, if the mists part, and you travel north and east through fog that seems to go on forever, you might emerge in Darkhan. It's a large domain, one of the biggest, with rolling hills and dark forests and a city called Iluk. At first glance, it might seem more civilized than Barovia. There are universities here, libraries, centers of learning. Magic is studied openly. The people seem less oppressed. Don't be fooled. Darkhan is ruled by Azaleen Rex, and Azaleen is perhaps the only Dark Lord who might rival Strahd in terms of power. He's a lich, which means his soul is bound to a phylactery, hidden somewhere in his domain. You could destroy his body 100 times, and he would simply reform, his consciousness pulling itself back together around that cursed artifact. He's been undead for so long that his physical form is little more than bones wrapped in robes and malice. He was a powerful wizard king in his own world centuries ago, ruling a kingdom called Darkhan. No, that's not right. The kingdom he ruled before, it had a different name. But here, in the Demiplane of Dread, even his domain bears the name Darkhan, as if the dark powers are mocking him with what he's lost. He pursued magical knowledge with an obsession that made other archmages look casual by comparison. And when his own son showed signs of magical talent that might one day surpass the father's own, Azaleen murdered him. not in rage, not in passion, but coldly, deliberately, because he could not bear the idea of being surpassed. The Dark Powers noticed, and they gave Azaleen exactly what he thought he wanted. And there's more. Azalin remembers that he had a son, remembers killing him, but he cannot remember the boy's name, cannot picture his face. There's a hole in his memory, a gap that torments him every time he touches it. He spent centuries trying to fill that hole, trying to remember, using every spell and ritual he knows, but the Dark Powers keep that knowledge just out of reach. His son's name, his son's face, they're gone, and they will stay gone. If you meet Azaleen, and pray to whatever gods might still hear you that you don't, know this: he is brilliant, patient, and utterly without mercy. He has been trying to escape Ravenloft longer than most domains have existed. He has experimented with countless methods, from arcane rituals to building devices called the apparatus that can peer beyond the mists. He's willing to sacrifice anyone and anything in pursuit of freedom or magical advancement, including you. Especially you, if you show even a hint of knowledge that might be useful. Now, if the mists take you in a different direction, if you somehow travel west from Barovia through fog that chills you to your bones, you might find yourself in Lemordia. And here, the horror shifts from supernatural to something colder, more scientific, more human. Lemordia is a northern domain, all snow and ice and mountains that scrape the gray sky. The wind here bites deep, and the cold is a constant companion. The people here don't believe in magic the way Barovians do. They believe in science, in reason, in the power of human understanding to conquer nature itself, which makes what happened here all the more tragic. The Dark Lord of Lemordia is Dr. Victor Mordenheim, and his story is Frankenstein made real and terrible. Mordenheim was a brilliant physician, possibly the greatest medical mind his original world had ever produced. But brilliance, unchecked by morality, becomes monstrosity. He became obsessed with defeating death, not through magic or prayer or divine intervention, but through science, through understanding the mechanisms of life itself and learning to replicate them. Noble goal, perhaps, but the methods... He conducted experiments, horrible experiments. He murdered innocents to harvest their organs and tissues. He stitched together body parts like a tailor working with cloth, mixing and matching pieces from different corpses, seeking the perfect combination. His laboratory became a charnel house. His notes became a catalog of atrocities. And eventually, impossibly, he succeeded. He created life from dead flesh, a creature he named Adam, after the first man in creation myths. But Adam was not the grateful creation Mordenheim imagined. The creature opened its eyes and looked around the laboratory, at the pieces of corpses, at the blood and tools, and understood immediately what it was, what had been done to it. The creature was intelligent, articulate, and utterly horrified by its own existence. Adam looked in a mirror and saw a patchwork monster, skin of different colors, stitched together, features that didn't quite match. It tried to integrate into society, seeking acceptance, seeking connection. It was met with screams and violence, chased with torches and pitchforks, hunted like the monster it appeared to be, even though inside it carried a soul as tortured as any in Ravenloft. And it learned to hate its creator, to hate Victor Mordenheim for bringing it into a world that would never accept it, for playing God without considering the consequences, for creating life and then abandoning it to suffer alone. Now, centuries later, Mordenheim and Adam are locked in an eternal feud. The creature orchestrates elaborate revenges, destroying everything Mordenheim cares about. He kills the doctor's colleagues, burns his research, terrorizes anyone he shows affection toward. And Mordenheim attempts to either destroy Adam or create a companion for him, hoping that if Adam had another of his kind, the creature might finally leave him in peace. Neither succeeds. Neither can. Mordenheim's curse is twofold, you see. First, he cannot die. He's tried many times. He's taken poison, put a rope around his neck, held a blade to his wrists. The dark powers won't allow it. His body refuses to give up. He's forced to continue living, to continue witnessing the consequences of his actions, to continue existing in a world where his greatest achievement despises him. And second, his greatest creation, the being that should have been his triumph, his proof that science could conquer death itself, despises him, will always despise him. Adam is a constant reminder of Mordenheim's sin, a walking embodiment of hubris and cruelty. He brought something into the world, and that something's entire existence is suffering. And he cannot undo it, cannot fix it, can only endure it forever. If you find yourself in Lamordia, in the city of New Fürstenberg, or the smaller towns scattered across the frozen landscape, be careful. Adam moves through this domain like a ghost, sometimes helping those in need, showing a capacity for kindness that makes his tragedy all the more poignant. But other times, destroying those who remind him of his creator, lashing out at a world that rejected him. And Mordenheim, he's so focused on his feud with Adam, so consumed by trying to either end the creature or appease it, that he barely notices the suffering of anyone else. You're either useful to him or you're irrelevant. There are other domains, traveler. So many others. Some I'll mention because you need to know they exist, even if you pray you never visit them. There's Falconia, ruled by Vlad Drakov. In his former life, Drakov was a warlord who conquered everything in his path, brilliant tactician, ruthless commander, unstoppable force. The dark powers gave him a domain that seems purpose-built for military expansion. Flat plains, strategic choke points, resources for maintaining armies. And yet, every single time he tries to invade another domain, every time he marches his armies into the mist intending to conquer new territory, he fails. Not through lack of skill or poor strategy, the dark powers simply don't allow it. His armies are turned back by the mists, scattered by impossible weather, defeated by circumstances that make no tactical sense. Drakov is a conqueror who cannot conquer, a warlord who cannot wage successful war beyond his own borders. He's tried countless times over the centuries, failed every single time. And he still hasn't learned, still hasn't stopped trying. His domain reflects this, a realm perpetually mobilized for war, its people ground down by constant military conscription, and Drakov's brutal punishments for failure. There's Harekir, a desert domain, where an ancient mummy lord named Unkatep rules, or tries to. He was once a priest-king in a realm much like ancient Egypt. He blasphemed against the gods he served, conducting dark rituals in an attempt to achieve divinity himself. His curse is elegant in its simplicity. He wakes periodically when the sands shift and reveal his tomb. He attempts to rebuild his kingdom, to reclaim his former glory, to establish his rule. And then the sands shift again, burying everything he's built, his temples, his monuments, his very tomb, all covered by uncaring earth. He's the king of nothing, worshipped by none. His ambitions literally buried over and over again for all eternity. There's Valachan, a jungle domain where the hunt never ends. Its dark lord is Shakuna, a powerful were-panther who views all sapient beings as prey. The jungles are beautiful in a way, lush and green and teeming with life, but they're also lethal. Traps everywhere,
predators stalking through the trees, and above it all, a Shakuna hunting the most dangerous game, people. She forces captured visitors to participate in her hunts, giving them a head start before pursuing them through the jungle. Some survive, most don't. And those who do survive carry the memory of being prey, of being hunted by something faster and stronger and more cunning than themselves.
And there are stranger domains still. Blue Spurs, where mind flayers from beyond the stars conduct horrific experiments on captured victims, probing their minds and bodies in pursuit of unknowable goals. Suragne, a swamp domain where a kindly plantation owner named Antonimus Roy hides a terrible truth. His entire workforce consists of mindless undead, corpses animated by necromancy, and he must maintain an illusion of benevolence while knowing his entire domain is built on cruelty and enslavement. There's the Carnival, a traveling domain that moves through the mists, appearing and disappearing seemingly at random. It's run by a mysterious being, and it brings wonder and horror in equal measure. Some who visit the carnival leave changed, sometimes for better, often for worse. There's Tapist, where fey creatures have turned malevolent, where goblin tribes raid human settlements, and something called the Nightmare Court holds sway. There's Borca, ruled by two cousins locked in a poisonous rivalry, each trying to poison or politically destroy the other while maintaining facades of civility. There's Markovia, where a mad doctor's experiments have turned most of the population into beast-human hybrids called Broken Ones. Each domain is its own story, its own particular brand of nightmare. Some are large, spanning hundreds of miles. Others are small, just a single building or a stretch of road that repeats endlessly. All of them are prisons. All of them are perfect in their cruelty. And all of them, every single one, are held together by the mists. Now let's talk about the mists themselves, because understanding them might be the difference between escape and eternal imprisonment. The mists of Ravenloft are more than weather, more than simple fog. They are the substance of the demiplane itself, the walls of every prison, the mechanism by which the dark powers exert their will. They are intelligent, or at least purposeful, acting with intent, even if they don't possess consciousness in any way we would recognize. You felt them already. That moment when you first enter Ravenloft, when the fog wrapped around you like wet cloth, when breathing became difficult and your voice disappeared into the gray. That was your first lesson. The mists are alive in their own way, and they are always, always watching. For Dark Lords, the mists are absolute barriers. Strahd cannot leave Barovia. Azaleen cannot depart Darkon. Each lord is confined to their domain, and any attempt to cross the borders results in the mists rising and forcing them back, sometimes violently. The mists can become solid walls impossible to pass. They can drain vitality, leaving even immortal beings weak and helpless. They are the physical manifestation of each Dark Lord's imprisonment. But for others, the mists are more complicated. Regular inhabitants of Ravenloft, those born within the demiplane, generally cannot leave their home domains either. The mists turn them back, creating invisible barriers that seem impossible to cross. Or worse, if someone pushes too hard, tries too desperately to leave, the mists simply kill them. They drain life and vitality until nothing remains but a corpse that collapses just steps from where they started. For outsiders, however, for those like you who were pulled into Ravenloft from other planes or worlds, the mists behave differently. They can sometimes pass between domains, though never with certainty. The mists might allow passage one day and forbid it the next. You might walk through them and emerge in a different domain entirely, or you might find yourself back where you started. There seems to be no consistent rule, no pattern you can learn and exploit, only the whim of the dark powers themselves. This unpredictability is itself a form of torture, particularly for those who desperately seek escape. You might journey for days through the mists, convinced you're making progress toward freedom, only to emerge in yet another cursed domain. You might find yourself able to leave one prison, only to discover you've merely moved to a different cell. Some travelers have reported walking through the mists for what felt like hours, only to emerge moments after they entered, back in the same spot. Others report the opposite, entering for what felt like moments and losing days or weeks of time. The mists also serve another purpose. They allow the dark powers to bring in new victims. Sometimes the mists reach beyond Ravenloft, extending into other planes, other worlds, and they pull individuals or entire communities into the Demiplane. This is what happened with Barovia itself. The entire valley and all of its inhabitants dragged into Ravenloft the night Strahd completed his transformation. It happens on smaller scales constantly. A merchant caravan traveling along a road in Faerun might suddenly be enveloped in fog. When it clears, they're in Ravenloft, on a road that looks similar but is decidedly somewhere else. A ship might sail into a fog bank and emerge in the Sea of Sorrows, trapped between cursed islands. Individuals might step into mist in one world and step out in Ravenloft, with no understanding of how or why. Some scholars believe the dark powers select these victims deliberately, choosing specific individuals who might affect the stories unfolding in their domains. Perhaps they bring in heroes who might challenge a dark lord, adding complications to the eternal drama. Perhaps they bring in innocents who might become victims, food for the monster, or perhaps future reincarnations of lost loves, fuel for obsession. Whatever the reason, the mists grow Ravenloft. They expand it, add to it, bring new elements into play, and they ensure that no one leaves without permission. But there is one group that seems to have a unique relationship with the mists, a people who can pass through barriers that stop everyone else, the Vistani. Picture this. You're lost in the mists, turned around, your supplies dwindling. Your party is arguing about which direction to go. The fog presses in from all sides, cold and clammy and oppressive. Then you hear it, the jingle of bells, the creak of wheelchairs, the sound of a violin playing a melody that seems both mournful and defiant. Through the fog, you see shapes. Painted wagons, bright colors bleeding through the gray, vibrant reds and golds and purples, completely out of place in this realm of gloom. You hear laughter, genuine laughter, something you haven't heard since entering Ravenloft. You found the Vistani. The Vistani are wandering folk, travelers who move between domains with relative freedom. They live in caravans, traveling the roads of Ravenloft, trading, telling fortunes, and performing. They dress in bright colors, play music, dance around campfires. They seem to carry with them an air of freedom that is otherwise absent from the Demiplane of Dread. And somehow, impossibly, they can pass through the mists. Not always, and not with complete certainty, but far more reliably than anyone else. When a Vistani caravan approaches a domain's border, the mists often part for them, allowing passage between realms that others cannot reach. They travel between domains that regular inhabitants can never leave. They walk roads that lead nowhere for everyone else, but somehow lead somewhere for them. Dark Lords generally do not trouble the Vistani. There are stories of Dark Lords who have tried to harm them and found themselves cursed with terrible luck. Crops failing, enemies multiplying, plans falling apart. Or they discovered that the entire Vistani tribe would turn against them with surprising and devastating effectiveness. The Vistani might seem like simple travelers, but they can be dangerous when roused. They have their own magic, their own traditions, their own ways of dealing with threats. As a result, most Dark Lords allow the Vistani to pass through their domains unmolested. Strahd has a particular fondness for them, or at least a respect. They were present at his transformation, some legends say. They witnessed his crime and were swept into Ravenloft along with everyone else. But unlike the other inhabitants of Barovia, the Vistani retained their freedom to roam.
This has led to many theories about the Vistani's nature. Some believe they serve the dark powers directly, acting as agents or observers, moving pieces around the great game. Others think the Vistani made some ancient pact that grants them protection, trading something precious for their freedom to travel. Still, others suggest that the Vistani are simply too useful to the dark powers' purposes to be eliminated. They serve as messengers, as plot devices, as wild cards in the stories that unfold across the domains. The Vistani themselves are tight-lipped about their relationship with the mists and the dark powers. They tell fortunes using Taraka decks, cards that seem to predict the future with eerie accuracy. They speak of fate and destiny. They warn travelers about the dangers ahead, though they rarely intervene directly. They are observers, storytellers, witnesses to the tragedies of Ravenloft. Not all Vistani are noble, it should be noted. Some have been corrupted by the domains they travel through. Some serve Dark Lords willingly, acting as spies or kidnappers or worse. These evil Vistani are particularly tragic because they have freedom that others lack, yet they choose to use it in service of darkness. They might lure travelers into traps or deliver victims to their Dark Lord masters, or use their fortune-telling abilities to manipulate and control. But most Vistani are simply trying to survive, maintaining their culture and their families in a realm of horror. They represent hope, in a way, the idea that it is possible to maintain humanity and freedom even in the Demiplane of Dread. Their campfires are often safe havens, places where travelers can rest without fear of immediate danger. Their caravans are sometimes the only friendly faces an adventurer will see in a hostile domain. And sometimes, very rarely, the Vistani can help someone escape Ravenloft entirely. There are stories of Vistani caravans that led lost souls through the mists and out of the Demiplane, returning them to their homeworlds. Whether this is true or simply legend is hard to say, but in a realm of horror, sometimes a legend of hope is the most powerful thing of all. So, if you see those painted wagons in the mist, if you hear that violin music echoing through the fog, approach with respect. The Vistani might be your only chance at survival, or escape, or at the very least, a warm fire and a moment of respite, in a land where both are precious beyond measure. Now, let's address the question that's probably been weighing on your mind since you first realized where you are. Can you escape? Is there a way out of Ravenloft, or are you trapped here forever? The answer is complicated, but it starts with this. Yes, escape is possible, but it is extraordinarily rare, and the cost is often steep. We've already mentioned Tristan A. Blanc, the former Dark Lord of Forlorn, who achieved redemption and was released. His case suggests that the dark powers can be satisfied. The genuine remorse and self-sacrifice can earn freedom. But Tristan's escape required him to fundamentally change who he was, to reject the evil that led to his imprisonment. For most Dark Lords, this is psychologically impossible. They are too committed to their paths, too defined by their sins, too broken by their obsessions. For regular inhabitants of Ravenloft,
escape is theoretically possible, but vanishingly rare. The mists might allow someone to leave if the dark powers will it, but why they would will it is unclear. Perhaps if someone's story has reached a natural conclusion, if they have served their purpose in the grand drama, the dark powers might release them. Or perhaps it is simply arbitrary, a whim of entities whose motivations are beyond mortal understanding. For outsiders, adventurers pulled into Ravenloft from beyond the mists, escape is more achievable, but still difficult. These individuals are not bound to Ravenloft in the same fundamental way as Dark Lords or native inhabitants. They are visitors, however unwilling, and sometimes the mists open for visitors. There are documented cases of adventuring parties finding their way out of Ravenloft. Sometimes they accomplish some great deed, defeat a Dark Lord, or resolve the domain's central curse, and the mists part, offering a path home. Sometimes they simply wander the right path at the right time, and the mists allow passage. There is no formula, no guaranteed method. It seems to depend on the will of the dark powers, on narrative satisfaction, on forces beyond mortal understanding. Some have speculated that the key to escape is understanding one's role in the story. If you were pulled into Ravenloft to fulfill a specific purpose, perhaps completing that purpose allows you to leave. But identifying that purpose is often impossible until after the fact, if then. Were you brought here to challenge Strahd? To save Arena Kaliana, his current obsession? To witness something? To learn something? The dark powers don't explain, and trying to guess is like trying to read the mind of the mists themselves. Others have attempted to force their way out through magic. Powerful spells like plane shift or bait have been tried countless times. Sometimes they work, pulling the caster and their companions out of Ravenloft and depositing them in other planes, but more often they fail spectacularly. The spell might seem to work, might consume its components and produce its usual effects, only to have the travelers emerge from magical energy still within Ravenloft, perhaps even deeper than before. The dark powers seem to take particular pleasure in thwarting such attempts. A gate spell might open, might show glimpses of your destination plane, only to reveal that it actually connects to another domain of Ravenloft, a trap disguised as escape. You step through thinking you're finally free, only to find yourself in Darkon or Lemordia, or somewhere worse. A plane shift might transport you to what seems like your homeworld, only for you to discover subtle wrongnesses, inconsistencies that reveal you're actually in a domain designed to mimic your home, a perfect prison of false hope. This is psychological warfare of the highest order. The dark powers understand that hope is sometimes more torturous than despair. To believe you've escaped, to think you're finally free, only to discover you're still trapped, is a cruelty that can break even the strongest will. And yet, despite all this, people do escape. Rarely, unpredictably, but it happens. Stories spread through Ravenloft of those who made it out, who returned home, who lived to tell the tale. These stories keep hope alive, even as they are impossible to verify. After all, if someone truly escaped, they're not here to confirm it. Some who escape carry marks of their time in Ravenloft. They might bear scars that never quite heal, or find that shadows seem darker around them, or discover that the mists occasionally appear at the edges of their vision, even in the mundane world. Ravenloft does not fully release those who have walked its cursed roads. A piece of the demiplane stays with them, a shadow over their souls. And there are those who escape physically, but never mentally. The horrors they witnessed, the impossible situations they endured, the moral compromises they made to survive, these things haunt them long after they've left Ravenloft. They might be free of the mists, but they carry Ravenloft within them, a psychological prison that persists long after the physical one has been left behind. This raises an uncomfortable question. If you escape Ravenloft but are forever changed by the experience, forever haunted by what you endured, have you truly escaped? Or has the Demiplane simply expanded its borders, claiming not your body, but your mind? The dark powers never answer. They never explain. They simply watch and wait, and continue their eternal work of crafting perfect prisons for the unforgivable. And so, traveler, we come to the end of our journey through the lore of Ravenloft. You stand now with more knowledge than you had when the mists first took you. You understand the dark powers, at least as much as anyone can. You know Strahd's story, his endless tragedy. You've heard of other domains, other dark lords, other flavors of horror that might await you if you're forced to travel beyond Barovia's borders. You know about the mists, how they function, how they trap and torture and occasionally, very occasionally, allow passage. You know about the Vistani, the wandering folk who might be your only allies in this cursed realm. And you know about escape, how rare it is, how difficult, how uncertain.